Hello, welcome to my channel and welcome to my yoga series. Today we're on part 3 of my absolute beginners yoga series. We are going to do mountain pose, we are going to do a leg stretch on the floor, and we're going to do warrior pose 2, which is a standing stretch. And actually each of those build on what we did in part 1 and part 2. So the equipment that I would recommend you try and get hold of for this are a belt if you can. It doesn't have to be a yoga belt, but something ideally non-stretchy that you can hold that's at least wider than hip width. So if you can see how I'm holding that sort of width. And the second thing is to either have a chair or be somewhere near a wall. That would be helpful later on. Okay, so let's begin with mountain pose. Mountain pose is the basic standing position. So you want to have your feet together in the centre of your mat, and for the first time just place your belt down. You'll need that in a moment. So join the big toes, join the joint of the big toes. Your big toes may face forwards, they may not, that's fine. But join the joint of the big toes and join the inner heel. Spread out your feet if you can. If you need to, you can even lean down and do that with your feet. And then just stretch your arms at about 50% effort down the side of your body. Bring the weight to the heels without falling over, and then reach the toes and the feet forwards. So you're centered a little bit more over the heels than the front of the foot, but you are still working to press down the ball of the foot. As you bring weight to those heels, also draw the tailbone down and in. So the tailbone down here, down and in, which will lift the front of your pelvis up and equalize the pelvis. So most of us, a lot of us, hold the pelvis slightly tilted forwards as a habit. That creates stress and compression in the lower back, and it's also not straight. So we want to take the tailbone in and we want to lift the front of the pelvis up. Lift and broaden the collarbones and the shoulders. Be aware of holding your head straight and even. So that's basic mountain pose. What we're going to add, so just relax for a moment. I'm going to turn sideways. We're going to take the feet slightly apart, so you can do feet apart and feet together. And if you find it sensitive on your back, some people do with the feet together, then you should practice always with the feet apart until that sensitivity recovers. So we're all going to be feet apart, hip distance, so underneath your hip joints. And you're going to hold the belt. So if I show you forwards first, you're going to hold the belt at least as wide as your shoulders, and in fact this first time slightly wider. Okay, if you have stiff shoulders, you're going to want to go a lot wider. But you need to be practical with this because you're going to take your arms overhead, or at least in that direction. So I'm going to show you sideways because the most important thing is that the rest of you doesn't move around. So hold the belt in the way I described, feet parallel, and come back to the mountain pose you had a moment ago. So weight into the heels, tailbone goes down, front of the pelvis goes up. So that's that tilt, but it's not really a pelvic tilt because we're bringing the pelvis back to neutral. So a level top kind of feeling to the pelvis rather than front down, back up. Lifting up the front of the body, broaden the shoulders. So we're holding our belt and we're going to take the belt out to shoulder height. Make sure the shoulders go down and just push slightly more with the webbed part of your thumb. So in between the thumb and the index finger, push slightly more with that, because otherwise what happens is that the wrists collapse in. So we want the wrists to be even on the inside and the outside. So push slightly more with the webbed part of your thumb. Shoulders down throughout this. Take your hands a little bit further, maybe just to point diagonally to the top corner of your room, and then weight there. Shoulders down, shoulders wide, wrists even, and then take the arms all the way to vertical if they will go without distorting the rest of your body. So the first thing to notice is making sure that the shoulders stay wide and down, not up and forwards. So wide and down with the shoulders and the shoulder blades. We'll bring the hands back down again. So first thing we paid attention to is the shoulders and not distorting those. What you want to pay attention to this time as well is the rest of your spine. The spine wants to help the shoulders, and the shoulders are lazy and a difficult joint to open, so they don't want to move. So essentially what that creates is that we end up doing this, where that action is not my shoulders at all. It takes my arms back, but it doesn't stretch my shoulders in the slightest. So that's why we begin in Tadasana. We begin with awareness of the spine, and we need to keep that. So you're back in Tadasana, hands are forwards, shoulders are down, wrists are even. Now notice the rest of your spine. Tailbone down, tummy button in, that's the very base of your spine. As you go a little bit further, keep the chest up, keep watching the tailbone and the tummy. Essentially, you just don't want them to move. If you get to that point where your shoulders won't move anymore without moving the rest of you, then that is the furthest you can go at the moment, and that's completely fine. A good place to watch, as well as the tailbone, I'm just going to let go of my belt so I can show you, is the front ribs here. They'll tend to flare forwards, and it's all part of the same action. So the lower front ribs, next time you breathe out, just let them come back into your body and make sure they stay into your body. So however far you take your shoulders, you know that you are working your shoulders and you're not working your spine, because it's not working the spine, it's pressure and distortion of the spine. And now take your arms back down again. And that's what we're going to do with Tadasana today. Now you can vary that with arms wide or arms narrow. You don't ever take, with this method, don't ever take the hands more narrow than shoulder distance apart. So let's do one more. You can either face forwards or face sideways. Just make sure you can see. But the most important thing to see is your own body. Weight back into your heels, lift in your Tadasana. Lots of things to watch. So I'm sure I say in every video that yoga is about attention. It's about awareness. And these apparently simple positions really teach you how much there is to watch, to see, and to be aware of as we work and open and strengthen our body as well. And then bring your hands back down again. And that's the finish of our Tadasana today. So the next position we're going to do is a warrior pose 2. So it's a standing position, and you won't need your belt and you won't need anything else except your mat and yourself. So stand in the centre of your mat and step your feet wide. We did triangle pose in the last class, and this is a related pose. So the way that we turned the feet in triangle pose, bringing the left foot in slightly and the right foot all the way around, is identical to what we do now. So we have the left foot in, right foot out, the knee points that way, the chest, the rib cage, the shoulders point forwards to the long edge of your mat. The back leg stays straight. Right leg is the front leg here, so we're going to use the right hand as we bend this knee, bend the knee, and we take the hand down the inner leg to make sure that that knee doesn't start to poke forwards, okay? Because bottom out, knee forwards is a common thing that goes wrong in this pose. So let's try that on the first side. Bend the knee, keep the knee back, back leg straight, front knee bends. If it can, it goes to a right angle, but it bends and it keeps pointing directly down your mat. If you remember, I emphasise that a lot in triangle pose as well. It's important for alignment, but it's also important for the health of your knee. Straighten your legs, feet face the front. To build your stamina a bit, keep your feet wide, but if you need to bring them in and take them out again between sides, it's completely fine. We turn the right foot in and the left foot out. Straight back leg, so push into the heel, grip with the large muscles of the thighs, and if you can, move that thigh back. But most of all, at this stage, keep the legs straight. Left hand to left leg, take your hand down the inner thigh to the inner knee. I am not pushing, I'm using this just to guide, just to build my awareness so that my knee stays back. So I've got a long straight edge of the front of my mat there, and I can see that this inner thigh is matching that straight edge. What's not happening is groin back, knee forwards. It twists your knee and again it distorts your spine. So straighten the leg, feet to the front. Again, bring your feet in and out between sides or keep them apart to build stamina. Now turn to the right again. This time, if you found it difficult to control your knee, then you should keep working with your hand at your knee. If you feel like you can look with your eyes and do enough that way, then you don't need to. And we'll take the arms wide. If you have one hand on the knee, you can still have your back arm wide. Just slightly lower than shoulder height, so your shoulders are relaxed. Watch that knee with your eyes and bend the knee. We don't ever allow the knee to go forwards of the ankle. So if you find that you could bend further, you move the back foot away and you go further, rather than letting the knee project further forwards than your ankle. Again, not good for your knee. As we learn yoga, we have to learn the ways to practice yoga safely. Otherwise, the benefits that we hope for come along with injuries, and you don't want that. So let's now straighten the legs, rest the arms, turn the feet to the front. So ultimately, this pose is a wider legged pose than triangle pose, but it depends where you're at this stage. That doesn't matter at the moment. You can store the piece of information for later, because ultimately it is wider because you need to make that right angled shape, but you go as wide as your body can for now. Turn in your right foot, turn out your left foot. So either use your hand or just your eyes to watch that front leg. Stretch either just the back arm or both arms out. And then we bend the left knee this time. So you look at that leg, you make sure it's staying back, you make sure it's pointing directly straight along your mat. You're also looking with your awareness at the back leg. Is it still straight? Look with awareness at your shoulders. Are they comfortable? Releasing down, stretch into your hands, and then straighten the leg. Rest your arms, turn your feet to the front and bring your feet together. So that is Warrior Pose 2, or Virabhadrasana II in Sanskrit. So for the last of our 3 poses today, we're going to be lying down on the floor. You will possibly need your belt, so have it to hand and place yourself in the centre of your mat and roll your spine down and just get your spine really comfortable. Now in the last video we did a pose where you have one leg straight on the floor and one leg up in the air, or there's a variation where you keep one leg bent and have one leg up in the air, and this pose is related to that one. So what we're going to start with is one leg bent and take a belt around your foot, but hold on the inside, so you can see from the angle you can look at, you can't see my arm. So it's going on the inside of my leg and it's holding my foot just by the inner, just by the arch. And what we're going to do is open that out to 90 degrees, keeping the first leg on the floor, that's my right leg as it happens, and my left leg is now open to about 90 degrees here, making a right angle. And I'm holding with my elbow bent, my shoulder comfortable so it can release back to the floor. Now for some of you that might be too far to open the leg that far, but if you can, that's how far you open it. And you encourage the knee towards the back of the armpit, but we don't go with too much force here. Okay, and then we're going to release that and go on the other side. So working into this in stages. So leg bent on the floor, now it's my right leg. Holding, you can see now more clearly on the inside of my leg, near the arch of my foot, but that depends on what your leg can do. Keeping my arm with the ability to have a bit of a bend to the shoulder so my shoulder can release back, and I open up the back of that leg to about a right angle, and then I encourage the knee down towards the back of my armpit, but not a huge amount of force there, just see what you have in you. And then release that and go back to the second side, sorry, the first side. So hold in the same way, start in the same place, but this time we're going to straighten the leg out along the floor. So you can see that we're beginning to do something similar to last time. Now I'm going to angle my knee outwards. So you can see that I'm drawing my foot towards me, and that angles my knee outwards. And what we're aiming for here, I'm just swapping hands so I can point, is we're aiming for this long leg bone, your thigh bone, to rotate in the hip socket. Okay, so that is the action that we're aiming for. There should be no twisting in the knee and no pulling in the ankle. So the knee and the ankle stay neutral, but we create a rotation in the hip. So your knee goes out as far as you can, but no pressure here. All the work is in your hip joint, like so, with the leg straight. If it's too much to straighten the leg, then you keep the leg bent. But if you can, straighten the other leg on the floor. Now let's swap to the second side again. I'm confusing my first and seconds today. So we start holding inside of the leg, and then the left leg for me now will straighten. And then rather than doing that, which was the first option, now we're rotating the thigh bone. So you can see I bend my elbow to help that. I'm not twisting my knee, I'm not distorting my ankle. My ankle and my knee are still straight. Everything that's happened there is about the hips. So this is similar to what we were doing in Tadasana, where we were trying to move the shoulders and not move the rest of the body. We often need to understand the yoga pose so we know which bits to move and which bits to stabilise, in order to both get the correct action of the pose but also to keep our body safe through the actions. Okay, now we're going to go back to the first side again. So that would be putting the belt on the left foot for me. Straighten out there. And essentially we're going to combine the two that we just did. So I'm going to rotate my leg out, and then I'm going to unfold the leg. And maybe this time I go a little bit further than 90 degrees. That is a strong stretch on the back of the leg. Maybe a strong stretch on your inner thigh as well. So don't be fooled into thinking that it's easy. It's not. So let me just show you the action again. We hold on the inner leg, we rotate, and then we unfold the leg. Don't worry about straightening the leg at this stage. Worry about keeping the rotation in the hip, keeping the knee neutral, keeping the ankle neutral. And also what needs to come in as we start to extend the leg out to the side is that we're not rolling over. Okay, so it becomes more difficult to stay flat on the floor, but that's a really important part of the pose. So let's do that on the second side. Bring your leg back in, take the belt off, and straighten out the leg along the floor. All the way along, you've got the option of keeping this leg bent if you need to. So rotate the leg out and then unfold the knee as well. So this time don't worry about drawing the knee down to the back of the arm, although keep it low if you're able to. This time it's more about the unfolding action of the leg, and that is really quite intense. So see how far you can go, but go carefully. You can see what an angle my hip is at. It's folded strongly, it's rotated out, so no wonder it's difficult. And I'm making sure that I don't roll. So you can see there, I let myself go. This is very light. I've got to keep solid across the back of both sides of my pelvis. Now there's one last, it's not really a variation because we're working towards the final shape of the pose. And so I'm going to show you that now. This may or may not be appropriate for you today. You can decide according to what you've already seen. So in this, we go both legs straight. Again, you could have the leg bent, but to be honest, you really need to be able to work with the leg straight. You can move that leg slightly out to the side. So did you see that? Started pointing straight as if I was stood up. Now I'm going to take my foot a little bit wider. That helps keep the weight in this direction, because what I'm going to do is turn the foot a little bit, and I'm going to keep my leg straight and take my leg out to the side. Now that's really challenging to not roll over. So what I'm going to recommend is that you get your chair at this point, or I'm actually going to show you on the other side with the wall. So you'll just need to have a little test. I've got a radiator, which is rather convenient. I'm going to move slightly further away. Have a little test to see that your foot is going to meet the wall without you rolling over excessively. We can move the straight leg out to the side, and we can put our arm out to the side. We're trying to get weight in this direction, but we also need to try and feel that we're very heavy on this side as we turn the toes a little bit and take the foot out to the side. So the wall will be there. Now I'm not trying to get my foot flat on the wall because that would turn my ankle slightly, but I am pushing against the wall to help me not roll. So I'm pushing my foot against the wall so I feel nice and stable. Basically, first of all, I can let go of the belt. I don't recommend you do that, but that shows you how much support I've got. And I feel like the whole of my body is completely facing the ceiling. I'm not turning towards that leg at all. I forgot about the leg on the floor, I went to sleep. So straighten the leg on the floor, push into your wall or your radiator, or if you're not near a wall or something like that, you can lean onto a chair. You won't be able to push in the same way, but you can rest your foot on the chair. But this isn't a pose where you rest. There are resting versions, but we're learning the active version first. Okay, and now I'm going to use my belt and my arm to help me bring the leg back up, bring the foot down. And if you're working with a wall, you're now going to need to turn yourself around like I am to do the other side. So this is quite an intense pose. Be kind to yourself. It might be that one of the intermediate variations is the right one for you at this stage to learn the action and to give your body space to open. So I'm showing you where it can go, and there's always a more advanced version of a yoga pose, believe me, or a version that will be more challenging for your body. What's advanced for one person is not advanced for everybody. But don't feel you have to do this just because I'm showing you it. But this is the direction of travel, and it helps you understand what we're adding everything together. So I'm going to straighten the leg along the floor. I'm going to straighten this leg in the air. I'm going to reach that arm out, and I'm going to move that leg just a little bit out. Certainly not off your mat, just to the edge of the mat at maximum. And then I'm going to take my leg to the side. Now the funny thing about human bodies is they usually have more strength and openness on one side than the other. It's not always consistently one side, but as you get to know your yoga poses, you will feel that different poses have more strength or more openness on one side versus the other. It's very normal, but it's for you to find out for your body. So here, I just have the little toe side of my foot against my wall, happens to be my radiator, but I'm pushing the little toe side of the foot in there to help me stay flat and facing the ceiling, so we're not rolling over at all. I'm trying not to forget that this leg exists, so I'm extending out with this leg just as much as I'm extending out with the leg at the side. You can be leaning that onto a chair as well. Ultimately, we learn to support the leg in the air, and ultimately, the leg actually reaches the floor, but the amount of activity and extension is not different whether the leg is suspended or whether the leg rests. So it's actually really important that you learn how to work with the leg suspended, because you learn all the actions of stabilizing things. This version where we support the leg is more achievable and allows you to stay and feel what's happening for longer than you would if you were suspending your leg, because that is rather challenging. We're going to bring that leg back in, and we're going to bring the foot down. And then you can roll over, ideally onto your right side, and you can sit up. So that is as far as we're going to take the practice today. Each of these videos just has 3 poses in it, but you will see how they're building on each other. So I'm going to put up now a list of how you could potentially link the poses together to make a longer practice. So you've learnt Tadasana, you've learnt forward bend, you've learnt downward facing dog, you've learnt triangle pose, you've learnt warrior pose 2, and you've learnt 2 variations of Supta Padangustasana, or lying on the floor leg stretches. And potentially one program that you could follow if you want to start to link them together to be a longer practice is begin with one of the Tadasana variations, go on to do the forward bend and the downward facing dog. They could be in either order, so you could do downward facing dog and then forward bend. It's up to you, you could vary it. Then perhaps move on to the lying down leg stretches, and then move on to triangle pose and warrior pose. So you could do Tadasana, forward bend, downward facing dog, lying down leg stretches, triangle pose, warrior pose. And if you really wanted to, you could come back down onto the floor, do 2 more lying down leg stretches, and then a relaxation. And you would have a really good beginner practice just from these 3 videos. We're going to be carrying on and doing more videos like this, covering more poses, covering more variations of poses, because there's so much to explore. But already in just 3 videos, you have something that you can build a really great practice for strength and openness that is suitable for almost everybody, and that gives you ways to practice safely. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you would like to support my channel and my teaching, my Ko-fi page is on screen now, and that's where you can make a small donation, just like if you were attending a class. If you're able to afford to do that, I really appreciate it, but don't feel obliged, because I'm glad to have you here and I'm glad to be supporting your practice, come what may. Thank you very much. Bye bye.